We're introducing you today to Bobbie Herzog. Bobbie lives on a ranch off of 1826, 140 acres. It's insane. If any of you went to glamping, that was at her house. Her husband is a cardiac anesthesiologist, and she's awesome. She's hysterical. So Shannon and I were talking yesterday that from the outside looking in, she looks like she has a very charmed life, okay?
I do.
But the beauty of Bobbie is that she is the warmest person. How did you describe her, Shannon?
Well, I just said that the thing about Bobbie is that she is so warm that she draws you in. It doesn't take long before you realize that the charmed life, I would not even call it a facade. There are some really great things in her life, but that hasn't come without some really, really tough times. And because she is so warm, she brings you in and shows you not only what has happened to her, but has given some perspective in how she's moved through those things and how she's changed her perspective as she has moved through them.
Yes, and the beauty of her is that she tells you what her tools are so that you can take whatever you're walking through and learn from her to walk through. So we're just gonna dive right in, and I'm gonna go ahead and tell you that Bobbie lost a brother. How old were you when your first brother passed away?
I was 17 when my next to oldest brother was killed in a motorcycle wreck.
On a military base, he was hit by a military truck, very tragic, very sudden, and he was your father's just love.
Yeah, he was my dad's, he loved both the boys with all his heart, and it was an equal love. But like sometimes we all do, if we have children, there's just a different chemistry with one than there is with another. And so Jeff and he were like this in chemistry and more alike than he and my other brother.
Okay, then I'm gonna fast forward 9 years, and her next brother also passed away. He died of the AIDS virus. This is in 1988 when it was at the height of fear, and I can remember that time when we heard about it, right? You thought that's a death sentence, they're horrible people, what are they doing? We were scared to death. Well, her family had just lost a son, and then they're losing another one. And so let's go back to where you said your dad had a great relationship with Jeff, but Todd, it was kind of a different story.
Yeah, my father was a minister, a Church of Christ preacher. And so all of us kids were always feeling like we were a little bit under the microscope anyway, because everybody kind of critiques how you live and your behavior and all that. And probably wasn't as bad as we thought, but you just feel that way when you're young. And so my oldest brother was gay, and he left home at 18, not wanting to bring dishonor and shame on my father's reputation, in his words. And so he moved to San Francisco when he was 18, and we hadn't seen him, my dad hadn't seen him in 5 years when he called to tell him he was sick. And so, you want me to tell the story?
Yes,
yeah.
go ahead.
So they got the call. I was living in Austin at the time after I graduated from college. I came down here and worked 2 jobs and tried to pay my bills and sang on 6th Street and all that stuff. And my father got a call, Mom and Dad got a call from Todd, and just said, I'm sick. And I just wanted you to know I'm very, very sick, and I wanted you to pray for me. And so my father prayed about it and realized, I gotta go see him. So he went out to San Francisco and knocked on his door, and a 6-foot man was 85 pounds. And he was not just sick, he was really sick. And so, long story short, he came home, my parents welcomed him home. And
well, they basically said, you're coming.
Yeah. we want to take care of you. He was broke, he was sick, and a lot of his friends were dying as well. And it was a really hard time because AIDS was very misunderstood, and there was shame and there was judgment, and we felt that very, very, strongly, that this was a hard thing, but we still loved our loved one, and we wanted to bring him home to help him die because we knew he was going to die.
And what a remarkable, just that alone. My dad's a pastor, Baptist. I know exactly what it's like to live under a microscope. I survived it. I've got 3 brothers, but they're still working on surviving it. And it's a lot of pain. But for your father who's just lost a son to then walk into the situation and decide, you know what? I'm going to love him first. I'm going to choose, no matter what the situation, I'm going to love my kid. And he had a short time to love him when he brought him home. But in that short time, tell us, only 5 more months. He only lived 5 more months. Tell us what happened and how the landscape of your family changed and you reconciled in this amazing story in that 5 months. But just tell us a little bit of what that was like.
Well, we walked through, the daily routine of taking care of him. I quit my job in Austin and moved home and lived at home for a month and then found an apartment and moved out, but still came and supported him. But back then, the AIDS virus was so new that there were a lot of myths that had to be addressed. Like, yes, it was in tears, yes, it was in saliva, yes, but it wasn't airborne, and you weren't going to catch it that way. So we had to educate ourselves, first of all. And then we had some wonderful people in the church that were unafraid that came and support us. And then we had some not so wonderful people shun us. And so we walked through those days and we began to realize that the only thing they had to combat AIDS back then was the AZT virus serum. And they did not know, neither did the doctors know at the time, that that was shutting down vital organs. And so my daily routine was supporting my parents when I could, when my dad wasn't at work, and taking my brother to emergency when his kidneys would fail or his lungs would start filling up, or at one point he had Kaposi sarcoma lesions cover his voice box and he lost the ability to speak. And so we just began damage control while this poor young man was suffering from the ravages of this disease.
And in the middle of this, well, go ahead.
Well, I want to point out something that has always really struck me about this story, and I don't want it to be missed because it's something that just sits within my soul when I hear this. But, knowing more of the detail about Bobbie's family and her dad being this all-American football player and, very, the picture of a very manly man, masculine guy, and having one son who they really have a lot of chemistry and he passes away, and then another son where they don't really feel like they have a lot in common, that they don't have the same chemistry, and they have this 5-year period where they're not speaking. And it's not just because the son feels like he's bringing shame to the family, but there's also they just haven't found their place to connect. And which doesn't happen for everybody, but it was just the picture of parental love for him to put everything aside and go to him and pick him up and say, you're coming home and we're going to take care of you. Yeah. Nothing else matters.
Well, I want to be really clear that they hadn't not actually spoken. I misspoken that in 5 years. They spoke on the phone and they wrote letters. Back then we did letters, right? No email. And so they did have a relationship, but Todd, out of respect for my father's profession, just removed himself from that community because he just didn't want to live that
blows
way.
My mind. That's how people live today. And I really believe that as Christ followers, if we can live transparently, and that's the point of this, man, I got a brother who's homeless. I've got one who's in recovery. If we can be transparent and honest about our real lives, well, then other women will go, oh, man, I thought she was just like super awesome, a husband, and he's this, and they live in this house, and their kids are this. No, we are all walking through difficulty. Yeah. Every single one of you, every single one of us. So if we can be honest about that, man, your life will change and my life will change too.
Absolutely. And the beauty of this story, if I can fast forward just a little bit, is that Todd did die, of course, and I watched my mom and dad as they went through this second death of yet another child, and I was so inspired by their love and the way they were able to be strong, how much they really were able to show this young man who was just so different and troubled his whole life. They were able to find, and I'm going to cry. I said I was going to do this, but I am. There was such redemption.
Yes.
There was such redemption because for the first time in his life, my brother knew Christ.
Yeah,
He knew Christ through the love that my parents showed.
that's right.
And he was baptized in the bathtub 2 weeks before he died. And they restored their relationship.
Yeah.
For the first time, my dad and my brother loved each other wholeheartedly. Honestly, there was no secrets between them.
Yeah.
They became friends. They laughed and they talked and they shared stories and they shared memories, and there was redemption.
Yeah.
But there's always redemption, you guys, no matter
Amen.
what you're going through.
Yeah.
There's always the Lord that says, I got this, and I've got you, and you have to trust him.
Yeah.
Even though it hurts and you can't see beyond what's happening or what might happen in the future or what might take place, and you're fearful and you're afraid, no matter what you're going through, you have to trust the Lord. You have to find a way to reach out and say, I don't see you in this, but I know you're there.
That's right.
we see this little section of time. Life is so short. The Lord sees in eternity. We see a moment and he sees all of it. And it's easy to get stuck. Okay, fast forward. Wipe your tears away, sister. Just kidding. I love Bobbie.
Here's
I
the
hang
thing.
out with her all the
How
time.
many years has it been? And I still am
Yeah.
moved to this emotion.
Yes.
But it's not sadness, I promise you. It's remembering the joy.
Yeah.
They chose joy, and it's remembering that brings these tears. Because it's remarkable.
Yes.
It
it's
really
awesome.
is. So I want to read this scripture if you don't
Do
mind.
it.
I know you have a bunch of questions because you're like just all over it. But this is a wonderful scripture that I live by, and I've lived by this for years, because this is the way that you recognize the reality of the life we're living, okay? This is 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 16 through 18. I can't see because I need glasses. Therefore, we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed daily.
That's right.
For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. And then the end verse says, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal.